Being a man with social anxiety makes it extremely difficult to have any success in life. You could call it being shy as a man or having social anxiety. It's really the same thing. It just makes things very difficult. And I mean that romantically and financially, like career wise. The cold hard truth is that if you are shy as a man, then literally nobody you come across will respect you or even like you. People just get frustrated when they have to deal with a shy, socially anxious man. I'm sure women with social anxiety have some struggles as well, but I'm pretty sure it's nothing close to what a man faces, especially talking about romantic struggles. I don't think social anxiety really affects a woman's love life at all, or at least not much. But as a man, if you don't approach, which is really, really hard to do when you are cripplingly shy due to your social anxiety, then your chances are just abysmal. And online dating doesn't work either. Theoretically, I guess if you're good looking enough, then you could probably at least find some dates on the dating apps. Not that I'd know anything about that, but even if you do get a woman to agree to meet up with you, it's just going to be a disaster in person if you're too shy to even make eye contact and you're just sitting there on your date silent. Maybe giving one word responses whenever she asks you a question, but other than that, basically just not really saying anything. You aren't going to be able to lead the conversation. You're not going to be able to take the lead in any sense because, in my experience, not just from my own personal experience, but from what I've seen throughout my life and heard from other guys' experiences, if you do not take the lead as a man, if you don't do most of the wheeling and dealing with the waiters or whoever you're dealing with, and you don't steer the conversation and you don't come up with the activities and everything, I mean, basically, if you don't act like an extrovert, essentially, then it's just a major uphill battle trying to attract a woman. But I don't want this video to just be about dating struggles. Obviously, that stuff's going to be at the forefront of my mind, being a socially anxious man. I am a virgin, by the way, at 36 years of age. But, anyways, yeah, social anxiety or being shy, whatever you want to call it, it just makes every aspect of your life harder. And you can say all you want, like, well, you just got to keep putting yourself out there. It gets better with time, blah, blah, blah. I've heard all the standard advice before. Maybe that stuff works for some people. I can only really speak for myself, but I have tried to put myself out there at various points throughout my life. I've tried in different ways, and I mean, up until relatively recently, it's not like I was just some recluse hiding in my mom's basement. That is pretty much how I live nowadays, but it wasn't always like this. I tried group activities, okay? I joined a boxing class. That really didn't go well. Not necessarily just because of my social anxiety, but I have plenty of videos talking about that whole situation, so I'm not going to rehash all that here. But yeah, I went to college, I got a degree, and I did, I made an effort to speak up in group projects and everything, which was really hard for me to do. I can't stress enough just how hard it is for someone like me with really severe social anxiety to actually speak up in a group setting like that. But, I did. I tried. I put in the effort. It didn't work. None of it worked. It never got any easier. And what else? Yeah, I had a regular 9 to 5 office job for several years, and I did talk to people and I did phone calls and everything as much as I had to get the job done. But again, it never got any easier. it was brutally difficult every single time. Like every single time. Even 4 years into the job, whenever my phone rang, I would panic. And it's not like that was a rare occurrence. I had to talk to people on the phone pretty much every day, and it just never got easier. It never got easier. I even tried a speed dating event one time. Just no amount of putting myself out there made any difference. But I mean, I guess I am glad I tried all of these things because otherwise I would still be wondering if maybe there was something I could do. And maybe the whole exposure therapy thing does work for some people. I'm not saying that anybody shouldn't try it, but for me, every time that I have tried to do something social, whether that be through work or school or speed dating or whatever, there's one common experience I always have. And I used to think maybe it's all just in my head, but by now I know it's not just in my head. It is true. It's really happening. And that common experience is that people just get very frustrated with me because of how shy I am. And it leads to people just not liking me and not respecting me. Okay, they don't respect me. I think I've told the story on here before about the time at my old job when we had some vendors visit us from China. And the whole time, the main guy, like the guy that owned the company in China, he kept he was basically boxing me out of the circle when everyone was like standing around talking. And the only thing he ever said to me was when he handed me his phone and he asked me to take a picture of him and all my coworkers. So I wasn't in the picture. He treated me like I was an assistant or something, basically, or like I was an intern or something. But really, I was a full-fledged engineer. He just automatically had zero respect for me, I guess because I never asserted myself. And also, social anxiety and being shy, it's not just about literally talking, like speaking words out loud. It also shows in things like your body language and where you choose to stand when you enter a room and where you choose to sit at a table and things like that. So I don't know if this Chinese guy actually thought I was just an intern or something. He might have actually thought that. I wouldn't be surprised. But he obviously did not respect me. And that's the kind of thing that always happens to me. I'm used to that kind of treatment. And I mean, with the way I am, I can't say I don't deserve to be, I can't say that I deserve to be respected. So I don't think the treatment is unfair, really. I kind of bring it upon myself in a way. But yeah, back to how people just don't like you when you're a man with social anxiety. I remember at my old job, whenever I would have to travel for work to visit manufacturers or whatever, they would always have me travel with one of the sales guys, usually the same guy, but there was like a few different people. But I could always tell whoever it was I was traveling with, these trips always started out fine. Like whoever it was that was with me, they'd always be perfectly normal and friendly at first. But they would always eventually just get so frustrated with me that I guess it wasn't even possible to continue being nice. Which I do understand. I can imagine for a more extroverted person, which most salespeople do tend to be, if you were stuck in the car with someone like me for 2.5 hours, and I'm just sitting there stone silent no matter what you say, probably visibly nervous just from you making basic everyday conversation, then yeah, I can see how that would be frustrating. So I don't blame people for sometimes reacting in a way where they pretty much end up making it clear to me that I am making them uncomfortable. I do get it, and I feel bad about it when it happens. I never want to make someone else feel uncomfortable. That's never been my intention, but that is what I do pretty much all the time because, I freeze. I don't know how to I don't know. I just get really nervous. I panic, I overthink everything, and I just like I'll just be sitting there next to my coworker in the car for hours, just not saying anything pretty much. I would answer a question if they ask me a direct question, but all I can ever manage are just really short, straight to the point responses, or I can answer a yes or no question, but I don't know how to carry a conversation. And if I get asked like an open-ended question, I pretty much just freeze. I just don't know what to say. It's not like I don't want to say anything. I don't want to be like this, and I'm not trying to be rude to people. I'm just very afraid. Like it's fear is what it is. That's what social anxiety is. And it's like my vocal cords are just paralyzed. And it's not just a problem with making friends at work. It was also a very big problem for my work performance. So every single year when I had a performance review with my supervisor, I would always get decent reviews on every item on the rubric except for communication, where I would get the worst score possible. So, say the rubric was like my performance was being scored from 1 to 5 in several different categories. So, my performance review would look something like, technical skills, 3, problem solving, 4, time management, 3, communication skills, 1, lowest score possible. And then my supervisor would have to have a talk with me, and he'd be like, look, you really got to start speaking up. You have to start talking during our design meetings. You're the engineer. You have to speak up about these things. And yeah, I was just never able to do that. So I actually ended up quitting that job on my own accord to focus on grad school, but I'm pretty sure I would have eventually been laid off. I never felt like I was actually productive for the company, although, I don't know. I mean, I actually did pretty well managing some interactions with a certain problematic vendor that we had to deal with because I'm actually pretty good with communication when I can just do it all through email. But I think that mostly went unnoticed by anyone that matters. So, I kind of felt like I was on the chopping block, and I probably would have been laid off if I didn't quit. But who knows, But either way, just with how shy I am in my social anxiety, my job performance was definitely affected by that in a very bad way. Like my job performance wasn't great. It wasn't great. And if I had the confidence and I didn't have social anxiety, I think my job performance would have been excellent, actually. I think it would have been really good. It was the one thing that was holding me back was my social anxiety. And ever since I left that job, I did end up getting a master's degree in computer science. Perfect timing, of course. I graduated into possibly the worst job market for programming jobs there's ever been, but I don't think that even matters much with the way that I am. I'm hopeless in an interview situation. There's just no amount of preparation that could save me. Because even if I aced all the technical questions, I'll always fail the is this a guy I want to work with test. I'm never going to pass that test because I am visibly a nervous wreck, especially in interviews. Even in just normal interaction with like a cashier at the store, I'm a nervous wreck. So just imagine in a high pressure situation like a job interview. Normal people get nervous during interviews, So imagine what it's like for me. And before anyone leaves any comments like, you can still get a programming job if you're socially awkward. All the programmers at my workplace are lacking in social skills. first of all, it's just a myth that the average programmer is socially inept, especially now. Anyone and everyone decided to major in computer science over the past 10 years or so because that was supposedly the most secure, high paying degree you could possibly get. I mean, we see how that turned out, but, it still is the case that recent computer science graduates are basically a lot of the same people that would have majored in finance or accounting like 10 years ago. So if you think there's not a ton of frat bros and social butterflies graduating with computer science degrees these days, then I don't know what to tell you. You're just living in the past because that's how it is. And especially, with the job market right now, there's easily way more socially capable CS degree holders that are looking for a job than there are jobs available. So there's really not that much hope for a guy like me. I'm pretty sure it only takes about 10 minutes of interacting with me for the average person to just get intensely frustrated with my lack of any ability whatsoever to carry on a conversation. Like, however bad you're imagining that I am, I promise you, it's probably worse than you think. And, when I make these videos, I probably come off as not that bad. I probably don't seem that socially anxious, but that's because I'm alone in a room right now talking to a camera. Okay? This is not the same situation as me actually interacting with another human being. It's an entirely different thing. Any time in my life when I have managed to kinda, sorta make a friend, which hasn't happened much, it's always someone that's just so extremely extroverted where I'm pretty sure the only thing they like about me is that I'll just let them talk nonstop without interrupting them. That's pretty much how it is with my friend Jamal, who is currently my only kinda friend right now. Although I hesitate to even call him my friend because it's not like we're very close or anything, but we are supposed to be hanging out pretty soon, so we'll see how that goes. But I get the feeling he's gonna get frustrated with me before too long, just like everyone else does. Because, I mean, it just seems obvious that that would happen, but, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. So far, he's been cool. Now, when it comes to the love life of a man with social anxiety, that's where it's a problem. Even if you are above average looking, it's still always going to be an uphill battle at the very least. Because, like I touched on before, as a man, if you do not actively approach women and successfully woo them, then you're pretty much just shit out of luck. But even if you're like so good looking that women approach you, or, maybe you just get lucky, because I'm sure an average looking man might get approached by a woman sometimes. There's 8 billion people on this planet, I'm sure it happens sometimes. But even then, it's still going to be tough to follow through and actually get to the point where you're able to get something going with that woman if your social anxiety is so bad that you can barely even manage to answer basic questions. Because that's how it is for me. So even if she's throwing herself at you, which I actually had that experience back in high school. I know looking at me now, it's hard to believe, but I used to have a nice thick head of hair and I'm pretty tall. I'm about 6'2". So back in high school, I actually had a time where a very attractive girl at my school was pretty much throwing herself at me, but I just couldn't capitalize on it. I actually made a video about that where I go into more detail. I think I called it Missed Opportunities of a High Inhibition Male or something along those lines. But basically, this girl was like rubbing my leg under the table with her foot. And then she tried to talk to me after class. Like she was just asking me like what I like to do for fun and everything like that. And I was just so shy. I just couldn't act. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't make a move. I couldn't, I've told this story in another video. Just watch that if you want to know. But I just wasn't able to capitalize on it. And also, this is another thing that I think usually goes along with social anxiety. My self confidence was so low and is currently, but it was even worse back then probably. But my self confidence was so low. I thought she was making fun of me. And like she was just doing all that so she could see how I'd react, and then she would go laugh about it with all her friends. So even if a woman is just throwing herself at you, when you have social anxiety, there's still a good chance that you won't be able to make anything of that opportunity. And it's the same for friendship or even job opportunities. Someone might approach you to try to make friends with you, or you might just get a random job opportunity somehow. But when you are extremely shy, it's just really, really difficult to actually seize those opportunities and make the most of it. But let's say you get really lucky and a woman approaches you. And let's just, this is a hypothetical situation, so let's just take it to the extreme. Let's say a beautiful woman approaches you and she likes that you're shy and that you look like you're panicking and you're too afraid to even say more than maybe just yes or no to whatever question she asks you. So she just keeps escalating even though you're not really reciprocating. So this scenario is obviously super unlikely, but let's just say it happens. Okay, a woman approaches you and you somehow, despite your shyness, you end up hooking up with her. Okay? Well, that's great. You hooked up. Okay? But now what? That's just a one night stand. Even if you hooked up with her a few times, that's probably great. Probably, incredible. That's a great experience, I'm sure. It might be the greatest moments of your life. But I can only speak for myself here. But ultimately, what I want is I want a wife. I want to start a family someday. And it's not even really a want, it's more like a human need. If you are not able to open up and just relax and speak your mind around someone, then there's no way that's going to end up being a long term thing. So even if you did get lucky like that, great. It's great, but ultimately that's not enough. If that happened to me, I already know I would most likely just end up right back where I started, because it would take a lot, like a whole lot of one-on-one time for me with a woman to actually start to feel comfortable enough to where I could actually just relax and be myself. So, there's not really any solution to this. There's not a solution to being cripplingly shy as a man. If you follow my channel, then you already know I did actually get my first girlfriend recently, because she pretty much did just come up to me and demand that I be her boyfriend. But that only lasted about 2 weeks before I'm pretty sure she was cheating on me. And she was just very disrespectful to me the entire time. And we did not have any intimate relations, by the way. So it was just a sham. It was not a real relationship, in my opinion. But even then, if she had been respectful and kind to me and everything, and she had been, if she actually really liked me, it still wouldn't have worked out, because I never even got to the point during that time where I truly felt comfortable around her. I was like still super nervous anytime I was with her. And she had to initiate pretty much everything, which was not much. But yeah, I just, you know, uh, somehow I've had more luck in the past year or two than the entire rest of my life combined. and I am grateful for the luck that I've had, but I still can't ever seal the freaking deal. I can't seal the deal because I just freeze like a scared animal trying to play dead or something. I always freeze. Longtime subscribers already know what I am, so I don't even have to say it. But I guess all that's kind of beside the point. The main message I want to put out there with this video is that as a man with severe social anxiety, it's not just that people don't like you. People actively get frustrated with your inability to execute very basic social functions that people resent you for it. It's not just a matter of people thinking like, oh, I don't really like this guy. It's that people actually actively dislike you because you frustrate them. You make them mad with your behavior, or your lack of behavior, maybe I should say, however you want to say it. It pisses people off because in certain situations, like going back to my work example with coworkers, when I would go visit a vendor or whatever with one of the salesmen at my old job, there was always certain information that I was supposed to be finding out. You know, like there's a reason that I was sent as an engineer on any particular visit. You know, I'm supposed to be figuring out if they're able to manufacture a certain part or whatever. For example, you know, I don't want to bore you with all the specific details, but oftentimes what would happen would be that I'd just be so shy and anxious and afraid to speak up. And not just that, but I remember like I would be waiting for the right moment to ask a certain question, and I would just keep waiting for that perfect moment, and it's just like that moment never came. So what would end up happening would be I just wouldn't ask the question. I just wouldn't ask the question that I needed to ask, and then whoever else it was that was with me, you know, the salesperson or whatever, they would have to ask instead when they're not even a technical person. So then they would have to like tell the people to explain it to me. So, you know, it's just a whole mess. And all of that is just because of my inaction. You know, because of my inaction, I forced my coworker to do that work that wasn't really his job. That's what I was supposed to be doing. And I remember one time in particular, I needed to call a manufacturer to get some information about their capabilities because I needed to know so I could finalize the design, but I kept putting it off because I'm so freaking shy. I was afraid to make the call. And I did email, by the way, but they just weren't responding to the email. So I needed to make this call, and it kind of just stalled progress on the whole project. Then the president of the company called me and the project manager into his office and basically chewed us out for taking too long to get the ball rolling on this project. But he was mostly directing it all toward the project manager, who was a very nice guy. So obviously, I felt horrible about that. You know, the guy got chewed out by his boss, and it was 100% my fault. And as you can imagine, the project manager was pretty fed up with me after that. I had no excuse for not making the call. I was just too afraid to pick up the phone and do it because of my social anxiety. But that's how it goes. When you're this freaking shy, it makes it so you're not dependable. You know, nobody can count on me because I'm always too afraid to go through with even basic social interactions. So, you know, who wants to be friends with a guy that never does any of the talking? I'm supposed to be going to the bar with my only friend pretty soon, probably this weekend, I think. But I keep thinking about how if he doesn't offer to buy me a drink, then I'm probably just not going to be able to have a drink because I'm too much of a coward to order my own drink, which sounds ridiculous, I know, but ordering drinks at a bar is kind of an unfamiliar situation to me. So I just don't really know how to do it. And I'm too afraid to just try it out because it's obviously not logical. Like, I know nothing too bad is going to happen no matter how awkward I am, but I'm just a big fat coward, I guess. I guess that's what it boils down to. But I just keep worrying that my friend is going to get frustrated with me because of how afraid I am to do pretty much any form of social interaction. Because, me and this guy, we're not really that close. We haven't really hung out that much. We just know each other from, we used to work together at a car wash, but whatever. I don't know. It probably won't be that bad. I'll probably make a video talking about it when it happens, but yeah, I just keep worrying about it. Social anxiety for a man is very, very difficult. Nobody likes a man that is shy. And it's not even just that people don't like you, it's that they actually dislike you, or, even worse, they don't respect you. So it's very hard to make friends or to have any success with dating. And it's hard in your career too, because it's hard to even get a job in the first place when you can barely even manage to answer basic questions in the interview. And then if you do get hired, good luck. I mean, I guess it depends on the job. I worked at a car wash for a while, and that wasn't too bad. But working as an engineer in like the white collar office job environment, that was brutal. And I'm pretty sure that everybody there hated me because I'm just so frustrating to be around. So, yeah, I just wanted to make this video to hopefully help some people understand what it's like living as a man with severe social anxiety. So if you watch this all the way through, I'd appreciate if you like the video. And I have lots of other videos kind of like this where I just talk about my life and some of the struggles I've been through. So check out some of my other videos if you want. But yeah, thank you for watching.